Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Espresso with Matt. I am here with Nancy Gentle Boudrie, a life coach who has a wonderful practice, wonderful LinkedIn content, and really we're going to talk today about mindfulness and what she does as a coach. Nancy, thank you so much for joining. I'm really happy you're here. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fabulous, Matt. Enjoying another day in paradise, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. As we have to start every episode, we want to make sure we're properly prepared. So for me, I am drinking. I can just get on the camera here. I have my Nutcracker holiday
Oh.
glass, a nice dark French press. But Nancy, what were you drinking today? What's in the coffee cup today?
So mine, I'm visualizing the beach, so you can see
Okay.
because it's nice and cold here in PA. And so my favorite, I'm a big coffee proponent as well, and been basically all my life, even starting as a little girl. They used to mix half cream and then just a splash of coffee. So good, bad, or indifferent. I grew up. My dad was from New Orleans, and we had that chuckery, or whatever it's
Oh
called.
wow, yeah.
Yeah. But my favorite is Life Boost coffee. So,
Okay.
and it's grown in Nicaragua. It's a single orange origin, low acid, sustainable type coffee. So I get it online. I can't remember where it's manufactured in the US here, but it's just delicious. And today's butterscotch. So
Well, butterscotch coffee, very fancy.
yeah.
My in-laws, my wife's family is Puerto Rican and Cuban, and they drink
Mm,
coffee, and quite frankly, they are big proponents that children shouldn't drink coffee. So when we would have
yeah.
our daughter babysitting by our in-laws, a little espresso in the bottle was not uncommon.
Exactly. When
It
I tell
goes,
people I grew up with that, they're like, "Whoa!" I'm like,
hey,
"Oh."
it keeps the baby awake.
I know. I'm like, oh, it would warm me up. She would serve it when we were cold. I grew up in Atlanta, and
Yeah.
in Atlanta isn't as cold as PA, but we would get it would be that. I remember it distinctly on those cold mornings that she would put a little in there. And my dad, it was my dad's culture, but she had picked up a lot of those things.
Well, that's awesome, and it's amazing how taste and smell and things can take us back. And
Yes.
for me, coffee and the conversations around coffee are really important. And again, I've said this to multiple people who drink green tea, hot beverage of your choice. We are
Yep.
beverage agnostic here on Espresso with Matt. So yeah, I'm really thrilled you're on today because I've really enjoyed your content, some of the messages you put out, and really has spoken to me over the last few months. Some of the themes of what you go, but could you just kind of give for the audience a little bit of a background, what you do, your background, um, and your role right now.
Sure. I have been a mindset coach for, it'll be 20 years in January. And came at it from my own personal journey of burnout. And we'll keep that story very condensed and tight. But we typically come into what we do purposefully and passionately by our own life journey. So I'm a mindset coach. I've created my own trademark methodology based on four doctors that I studied with over the course of these 15 years prior to, I made the trademarked, started that process in 2021. So, and it's based on four doctors, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Dr. David Hawkins, and Dr. Joe Dispenza. And there's four, it's Pathway to Inner Peace featuring the 4R method. So I utilize that, and whether I'm corporate speaking or group coaching or one-on-one coaching, and been just transforming lives for the last 20 years.
And the power of coaching, and I love that term. And it's funny because over the years I've had some amazing mentors, and then
Yes.
someone a few years ago said, Matt, you need a coach, and my reaction was almost visceral, like I need a
Yeah.
coach. But
Yeah.
when I played sports all through college, and my career had great mentorship. When I really thought about it, I really do enjoy coaching.
Yeah.
It just sometimes we've termed these things into something that people have reaction to. And I think one of the things as a leader right now is the idea of coaching. So tell me a little bit about your leadership specific coaching. You talk
Sure.
about burnout, you talk about mindfulness. How do you bring that to a leader? Because I think it's such an important concept all leaders should know about.
Yes. So what's neat is by pushing that content out, especially on LinkedIn and my Zen executive newsletter that I send out monthly. I'm really looking for those individuals and those professionals that you pique the interest of what I call conscious leadership. Someone who really wants to get to understand who they are, the root of who they are, and how it affects their leadership. And there's statistics and research out there, and I know there's one data that I use a lot that employees said 37% of the way they feel about their job, the way they do their job, is based on their leader's behavior. So, behavior, powerful word, right? So, teaching them that you cannot compartmentalize. If you're going through a tragic divorce, a very tumultuous experience in your life, the death of a loved one, whatever, that is going to bleed into your the way you your emotions create your thoughts, and they create your perception, and they dictate how you're going to show up. So I'm really teaching, I love teaching leaders how their own inner world, their own perceptions, dramatically affect those that they lead, and their belief system. You hear a lot of stuff about vulnerability. Vulnerability is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's how am I vulnerable but still leading? You're human. You're transparent. And I coach and mentor, and I loved how you use both words there, because coaching is a different. There is you're asking open-ended questions. You're getting the person to be reflective and their perspective on things. And mentoring is how I facilitate change, because one thing is academia, and now you're trying to apply it to their life or their life situations, right? And that's where mentoring comes in. And when you mentor even your employees, you've got to be vulnerable. You have to show your cards, because that's how they relate. So I use that a lot in my coaching, so that you can actually then reflect on your own life and go, oh, she was mentioning that about herself, but now I see the congruency in my life. Right? That's how you lead. It's such an empowering way, not this top down, dictative, you know, um, all that kind of old school stuff. Yeah.
Well, Nancy, I tell you, what you're saying to me really speaks to me because it has been an evolution of my leadership style over the years, in that, you know, the vulnerable leader, the idea of a servant leader, the idea of
Yes.
having um emotions and mindfulness, that has always not meshed with some of our images of leadership over the years. And I again have had the image of a strong leader who leaves things at the door and comes in, but you really can blend a lot of those together.
Yes.
And
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about the mindfulness
Sure.
and that concept, because I think that's such an important concept for people to be aware of today. And I think sometimes when we hear the word mindfulness, some people, okay, tune out a little bit. Okay, I'm,
Yes.
you know, but
Yes.
as I've incorporated my life a little bit over the years, I found a way to make it work for me. But what does mindfulness mean for you? How do you
Yes.
incorporate mindfulness? What does that really that term mean? It gets thrown around all the time, but really loosely
Exactly.
defined.
I'm so glad you're asking this, Matt, because this is also when I do a lot of my corporate presentations, I lead with this. People immediately have mindfulness as they're sitting in lotus position and they're chanting Om, right? And then they all chuckle. But that's truly, they think, A, it's only meditation and I can't meditate, so forget that. No, mindfulness is being the observer with curiosity and non-judgment of your present moment experience. Mindfully living is not meditation, but one of the vehicles to utilize to get into that self exploratory space is meditation. So the data and research shows, and we're talking 5, 8 minutes of reflective time. Again, you're not eyes closed chanting Om. That's a great form. Sure, knock yourself out if you like it. It's finding what resonates to bring your body into a state of balance. The cortisol, the serotonin, to come out of fight flight and be in this state of observation. Power lies in the pause. So you're really teaching people to get off the hamster wheel, get off that whatever that is inside of you, and take a moment to pause. No one ever regrets a pause. They regret when they don't take a pause. So that's
I gotta write
really
that
the
one. I gotta write that one down. The power of the pause. That's
exactly.
amazing. And I'm going to share a little bit for myself. I mean, over the years, as I started to work on my journey, yeah, again, my mind works in a way that pausing and thinking and meditating was always very, very tough for me. But
Mm-hmm.
if I could break it down to give me a few wins, a few things that didn't go your way today, what can you do differently? And starting my day in the morning with just a moment of gratitude. I'm thankful for something. Um,
Love it.
these few things, which don't take me a ton of time,
Mm-mm.
a ton of time, pluses, minuses, here, go from there, has really impacted me over the years. And what I found was I was getting into this cycle of when I had a failure or had a rough spot with anything, it spiraled. And you got into
Yes.
these thoughts of, oh, that's because you're no good, that's because you're angry, blah, blah, and you kept on going. And to break that spiral when you have those moments, it for me, it's just like, okay, that bad thing happened.
Right.
You can be mad about it for a minute. Let's move on from there. There's many different ways to move forward, but I love that idea of the power of the pause. And it is incredibly powerful, but you got to practice it. And so I
Got to
love that.
practice. Yes.
One of the things that's been freeing for me as I've worked with different mentors is there's different ways to go. I've worked with someone who meditates every day for 45 minutes. I could do 45 seconds, but some of the things that did pause before she answered questions, would do the gratitude journal, would do the things. I was able to adopt that. So Nancy, you work with leaders, you work with high pressured individuals who have to accomplish goals and have to get things done and feel a lot of burden on them. How do you work those two, which sounds a little counterintuitive? I'm going to pause, you get things done. I'm going to take care of myself and take care of all this. How do you balance those two things and be effective?
Yeah. So I really, I think me personally, I'm very grounded, and you show me the evidence, and now I'm more interested in application of it, right? So I come at it really showing them, our mind spends about 50% of its mind wandering a day, 50% of our waking hour. It's crazy, right? If you learn to cultivate just a few minutes of stillness, quietness, you will regain productivity back. So you're actually teaching them that it sounds like, oh my God, add it to the to do. And now I'm going to be even more buried than I was, but actually not, because the power in your intentionality and harnessing the power of your mind and showing who's the master, you actually become more productive. So,
And I love that idea of times. I focused my time on timers. I do a lot of
yeah,
timer things where I'm gonna do this for 5 minutes, ten
yep,
minutes. It's the way I've always been able to get things done. I don't want to do that for an hour, but I can do it for 5 minutes, kind of thing. Um, and again, sometimes for me, I'll give you an example like my phone. Okay, I'm gonna make some comments on LinkedIn post. I'm gonna do this for 20 minutes, and I set a timer 20 minutes. Okay, if not, you can get lost in social media. You can get
yeah,
lost in things. Emails, another perfect example at work. I could sit down and start email, and next thing you know, it'd be 10 o'clock at night, and I would never be done with my email.
right,
Sometimes you have to set the intentionality. So I love those ideas of being owning your time as a leader.
right.
Even 5 minutes, taking a minute to read. I was with another leader last week, and he talked about reading books, how important that was for leadership. That's awesome. You know, One of the things I'm talking a lot about with people these days, talk a lot with people who are in transition, whether it's career transition, they're looking for new opportunity, um, you know, society, just busyness, and really in a difficult spot. You know, How do you approach individuals as they develop goals and say when you work with leaders to set goals, to set new changes? How does mindfulness and your work kind of fit into those topics?
I get really lathered up when I get approached to for a new client that's in transition, because transition is a beautiful time to take that pause to reflect, what do I love about my line of work or my expertise? What do I dislike? What is a game changer for me? What is a hard no for me? These kind of reflective things are questions that are so impactful on leadership in transition. And noticing it's okay if the voice is so scared to death of scarcity, right? Because somebody loses their job, or this kind of thing. It gets a package. Okay, that money's going to run out. Um, but don't get caught in the trap of just grabbing. Like, let's take the time to really assess. And I get so lathered up because I've watched several of my clients land their beautiful, perfect, aligned, divine purpose job, and they actually thought they were going to retire. I can think of one that comes to mind. And I love when we have our coaching session, he always goes, "Man, I am so glad I'm back on that horse. I am so glad." And I'm like, yes, you have legacy to leave. Your wisdom has major knowledge to impart. And it's just a great time. Transition, instead of looking at it like, oh my gosh, it's more like, whoa, sky's the limit.
I love your approach, and it's something I've been doing over the last few months, looking at the opportunity for myself and with change. And change, sometimes happens to us sometimes where we don't necessarily
Yes.
want the change, but when it happens, you take a moment and say, that was a good thing, and I had the opportunity there because we get stuck in our track sometimes where it's really hard to get off the train, right?
Yeah.
You have the progression, and then changes can happen to all of us. The fact of the matter is, almost everyone's going to have significant change in their life, even whether you want to or not, it's going to happen. Um, and use an opportunity. I love those words of wisdom you had there about being purposeful in that discussion and really thinking about it as an opportunity. It's such great work. I was looking back at some of your content. One of my favorite quotes you had was about hoping versus choice. And I thought about that so much after I watched that a few days ago. The idea of like, I'm hoping for something good to happen versus I'm choosing something good to happen. Um, and man, that resonated with me a lot. Talk a little bit about that idea of how that's connected to mindfulness, goalness, and the idea of hope. We want something good versus choosing something good to happen. What's that
Yeah.
about?
So I think it stems back to when I originally started my journey of even so I owned an insurance agency, multiple locations, seven-figure agency, and I was burned out and really loved the line of work, love actually helping people from an insurance perspective. It wasn't the actual job. It was me, not having a compass and not being able to regulate my energy and all this kind of thing. So that's where I really realized, stop being a victim and be a master. And so I created, my slogan is create a life you design, not one of default. So you can see the theme that is happening here. I teach people to be very purposeful. And so hope is a great thing. Yeah, it's optimism, it's good, but never put yourself into a victim role. I'm hoping this will be better. No, I'm going to choose it to be better. And you're setting the tone for yourself. I i am the master of my life. And and when I say that, you can't dictate external forces, but you can dictate how you perceive it, how you greet it. And you got to stay the course. You have to have perseverance, tenacity. Miracles don't just happen overnight. Jobs that are, your ideal job, they don't just happen. Once in a blue moon, it's like, wow, that was easy. But a lot of times it's patience and
Yeah.
fortitude, right?
And,
So,
and I love this idea of hope first choice because I think it taps into something we talk a lot about is strengths and understanding what you're good at, what you do well, and
Yes.
owning that. Um, we spend a lot of time focused on where our deficiencies are sometimes,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and I think if you're choosing to talk to your strengths, talking to your narrative, and one of the things I talked to someone about a few weeks ago who was actually in transition, lost their job, I said, well, you get to write your story now. You get to tell your story. You get to control your narrative now. How empowering is that? That go out there and tell, build your brand, tell your narrative, tell your story. And the person I was talking with really kind of took it upon himself and said, yeah, that you're right. I mean, and that idea of choosing to be part of your strengths and part of your accomplishments is such a great thing. And you're very empowering. And I think it holds true when people are recovering from trauma, whether people are recovering in therapy or in the career, wherever it is,
Yeah.
that power of choice is so important. And there's extreme examples out there of that, but the fact of the matter is you have a choice in your reaction, and um, that is really important. As I thought a lot about that, my reaction is my choice, and
Correct. Correct.
that's tough. Sometimes tough for me to admit and say. I hope my wife doesn't watch this sometimes because it might be used against me sometimes, but it is really true. And one of the things that I like to talk about is that journey of reflecting and understanding yourselves. And one of the things that I personally have done a lot of lately is done like personality tests and assessments and kind of understanding those and understanding my triggers, understanding where my best self shows up and where my worst self shows up. Is that part of your work, and how do you get leaders to kind of have that conversation about to put themselves in the best possible situation and also prepare themselves when they're not, how they can respond? What's that work look like for you, Nancy?
Yeah. So in my 4 R's that I lead them through, there is a lot of reflection. I do not use the test, like those that we're talking about. They definitely have a great purpose. They're not involved in my coaching because I'm really teaching them to do it themselves, not to define themselves by a test. Like, oh well, this says I'm this or this that. I really want them to reflect um, and see their weaknesses as not weaknesses. Again, it's all about the balance. And so my 4 R's literally take them in a process, and depending on what they were retaining me for and what the ultimate goal and what they hope to achieve with me, then we tailor it to fit their needs. And the first one is recognizing, so teaching them that awareness piece of whatever that goal is where we're trying to get to. They have to live in awareness. And it's people will often tell me they have self-awareness, and in fact most times they tell me, yes, I'm very self-aware, but what I'm talking about is much deeper than what meets the eye. So it's really getting in there and teaching them the way to be mindfully aware. I want to teach them how to dial into their emotions, their thoughts, their body sensations, because by the way, your body is the best mind reader ever. And this is a different perspective. It's not your typical coaching. It's not your typical mentoring, because I'm coming at it very head on with this mindful piece. And so that recognizing and then releasing what doesn't serve. So there's a process of teaching them, you know, you'll fall back. You will have a reactionary moment. You will be triggered. But boy, that's a teachable moment for you. And so you've got to hold their hand. And I'm very much there to assist. That's part of the reason why you retain me, because you have access to me to apply it to real life situations. And then we get to the final, which is rewiring the brain. And people just love it because they can't believe how they make the transition. And mindfulness can become just as normal as breath. And people go, really? And I'm like, yes, because you actually rewire the brain to quiet the amygdala and activate the prefrontal cortex, the responsive parts of your brain. And this is not woo-woo, it's science, and it's there. So it's just a beautiful, and that's radiating your best self is the last of the 4. So
Last question before we get to our espresso
sure.
round. And really, I'm focused on. So I'm a leader now, and I want to get started. But what's the first step? What should I do? How do I get started on this journey
Sure.
a little bit with you?
I would love, get excited, get lathered up. Go over to my website, awakenwithlight.com. If you're looking for that executive coaching, it's called Pathway to Inner Peace, and you'll see it in my as you the drop down box, the screen kind of gives you a taste of it, and look and see and explore. I have free resources there as well. But then if you're ready to take that conversation, I have a breakthrough call that's 30 minutes, and that will be the best time of just being, if we don't work together, you'll get answers and get a path started for yourself. So I encourage people to do that. I also have a life coaching product, but my executive includes that business acumen. So really addressing the leader. And that's why I would say just really go into the pathway to inner peace. You'll see another program I call Rewire and Radiate. And the reason why I developed that was, what is funny is that I will work with a person and then they want their wife or their husband, their 17-year-old child. So I had to develop, because I've been in business so long, I build relationships. So so I'm not afraid of just working with somebody who isn't in that mindset. They just need life skill set. I've got that for them too. So
Like I said, wonderful messages, so topical today. I mean, people really in work and society really can benefit from all this work. And so I really highly encourage follow on LinkedIn, check out the website, some great stuff there. And really, some of your content that you put out have really impacted me over the last few months. So I thank you for that
thank you,
virtually.
Matt.
Some great stuff there. So let's get a little bit to our espresso round as we talk a little bit
Perfect.
about some things here. So one of the questions I would like to ask really is, what is the best piece of advice you ever got in your career or life over a cup of coffee? Could you share that with the audience?
Sure. When I started working with my mentor about 27 years ago, I would go to her place in Maryland. She lived on this big piece of land. And I would arrive and she would greet me with a cup of tea. And so this piece of advice was, over a cup of tea. And the one thing she told me was walk the walk, talk the talk. In other words, be the example of everything you teach or believe in, Nancy. If I could give you one piece of advice, just be it, whether it's the way of being or way of doing your life. And be that person, be congruent, and practice what you preach, and let your actions align with your words. And so I found that I carry that with me all the time, because in this noisy world of coaching, I am choosing a niche market. I am choosing to be a mindful leader, and I better be walking the walk and talking the talk.
That authentic style of leadership, I mean, and is so important. And
Yeah,
what a great message. We'll debate tea versus coffee another time. But that being said,
exactly.
but I will say this. I mean, that is such an important message for all leaders to hear. Is be authentic to yourself. And again, be strength based, what you're good at, what you believe in. Authentic leadership really wins the day. Maybe it's the same advice, but if you go back and talk to your younger self and say, young Nancy, I want you to understand this, 20, 30, 40 years ago, what piece of advice are you giving yourself?
Don't rush the process of life. So I remember, and you can probably tell from my energy, I always want to get to the next and greatest thing. It was like, and when I look and reflect, like I graduated from high school, I remember sort of celebrating, but I couldn't wait to get to college. I couldn't wait. I was eager for that next chapter. And then graduated from Auburn University. My one closest friend said, "Oh my God, I'm not ready to go out in the big bad world. She went and continued on for a master's. And I was like, what are you nuts? I want to seize the day, man. I got to get out. I got to start working. And I just carried this momentum of, wanting the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Well, now as I reflect, on my life, slow it down, Nancy, savor the moments. My children are adults, and when they come over, it's like I want to just capture it in a bottle, because I'm an empty nester and they're going to leave and they're going to go. And it's I just would say, just slow your roll, enjoy, tell yourself to slow down and stop and smell the roses along the way.
Everyone listens to that, Nancy, because that is really something we all could benefit from. Just really being mindful, genuinely appreciate each day as a gift, and we always are. Like in a blink, my child's 10 years old. How did it happen? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It happens so quick. Life happens so quick, and we don't appreciate always looking for the next thing. So really, that's great advice. And for all you out there, I would listen to that. Last question for today: cup of coffee, tea, hot beverage, anywhere in the world, anytime with anyone. Where you going? What are you doing?
When you sent these questions over and I was reflecting, my mind went to a million different people. But if I was really truthful with myself, the one thing I would like is to have my dad and the time that I spent. He had there later, my dad passed in 2013 at 90. So he lived a fulfilling full life. But their adult home had a big bay window, and it was in a senior community. It was their own home in this senior community, and it reflected on a property that had a private lake that was a bigger home, not a part of the community or anything. And so from his bay window, from his chair, he could see this man's lake and the sun rising. And when I would be come go home and spend time with him, I was always up when he was up. I'm an early riser. He was an early riser. My mom slept in and everybody else in the house. And I would come down and we would have coffee and we'd look out that bay window at that guy's lake and he'd go, what the temperature's like, or look at those geese or whatever. And then there was this a lot of silence, right? We're just looking at this beautiful picture. And if I could have that back, because at the time, I didn't realize how magical it is. But, I hear that Folgers jingle, best part of waking up, right? It's like when I come down in my morning, and especially right now with the Christmas tree, it's dark. It's 5:30. There's nothing around, and I light the Christmas. I turn the switch to light the Christmas tree up, and I sit there and I think of those moments with my dad because it was just such a magical time before the world wakes up and gets going. And
Yeah.
so that's the one person I would love to
Thank you for
capture.
sharing that. And your dad sounds like an amazing man and a great moment. And I will say two things. One, I agree that that quietness in the morning having coffee is so worth it. And of all the trees I've seen posted on social media, you have one of the nicest ones. I will say that.
And do you know it's
Great, great,
real? It is real. People think
beautiful
it's
tree.
fake.
Beautiful job. Well,
Thank you.
Nancy, I really, really appreciate you joining us today. Again, Awaken with Light is the webpage. Nancy Gentle Boudrie on the LinkedIn. Please follow her. Does a great job, great content out there. Nancy, such an important message for everyone to hear, especially at the end of the year. Really appreciate you joining Espresso with Matt today. Till the next cup, everyone. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Nancy, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Have a
Thank you.